you're gonna have to click on go live there as well.
Okay.
Wait, first see if it's showing.
So I see a go live in like the top right hand corner.
But do you see a photo of us or no?
No.
Not photo, like video. It should show our video.
Oh, something's coming up. Okay.
Yeah. We see
okay. Yeah. So we're gonna click go live on there.
Okay. Selecting it. Okay. It looks like it's on.
Awesome. And I'm gonna click go live on mine.
Okay.
Does it usually run by a few seconds or?
Probably
awesome.
not.
We are live. Okay. We are live on mine at least.
Awesome.
Same. Looks like.
Are you guys good to go? Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I'm gonna go live on Facebook right now as well.
Okay.
Add a title. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining. Just give us a minute here as we just go live on all platforms.
Let's see if I can.
Boom. And there we go. Hey guys, we're gonna be doing a live today. Oh, I think we're good to go. Are we live everywhere? Yeah, we are. Oh, yep. No. Facebook. Yeah, we're good everywhere. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on our live stream today. We have some very special guests here with us today. You know, every month we try to hold an Ask Me Anything where we bring an expert guest on a particular topic to have your questions answered. And we've been getting a lot of requests on short-term rentals, specifically Airbnbs, especially with the landscape of Ontario Landlord-Tenant Board. More people are focused on short-term rentals. So I thought, who else to bring but our special guest today, Tracey and Aahil from Dongle Capital. They're a husband and wife duo who manage over 60 short-term rentals all across Canada, not just Ontario, right? It's across different provinces. And you guys have been able to scale your business fairly quickly. So appreciate you guys jumping on today's live. And by the way, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the live stream on Facebook, on YouTube, and we will definitely get to it. In the meantime, I'll leave it up to you guys to introduce yourself a little bit more.
Thanks, Austin. Thanks for having us here. Kind of echoing what you were saying. Yeah, Airbnb is definitely, in terms of the interest in it or curiosity around it, kind of just grows and grows, you know, especially in Ontario with the landlord-tenant board rules. It's just become more of a option that landlords want to consider. But yeah, bit about us is that we are both full-time in our business. We've been doing Airbnb we're at like 4.5 years now, just over 4 years. Prior to our Airbnb life, we were in the corporate world. I'm a CPA, Aahil's a CFA. So we've kind of always been in the finance field. So something I would say so far from hospitality. So I don't really think we came with like a lot of transferable skills, a lot of like, you know, revenue projections and finances, of course, that comes over. But in terms of like, how do you get 5-star stays? What makes guests comfortable? How like sales and marketing and all that, so far from. So we really just like learned everything as we came along, and it really was a product of COVID. You know, we started doing Airbnb in our own home that we purchased in our basement apartment. Grew the business really organically through friends and family. So like my dad's coworker, my dad was talking to her that like, oh, my daughter does Airbnb, and she's like, oh, can she do it for me? Then that did well. I got a few referral connections through Instagram as well. So that was really interesting. You know, again, just landlords saying, hey, I see what you're doing. Can you help me out? We did do a 1.5 years of like full-blown arbitrage, Airbnb arbitrage. So that's where we lease properties from landlords. We're the tenant, but with their permission, we sublease it on Airbnb. And then, you know, whatever gains or losses between the long-term rent and the Airbnb rentals is at our risk. But kind of a 1.5 years ago, we've done a full pivot where our portfolio basically was essentially 90% arbitrage to now it is more 90% Airbnb management, which is our go-forward focus.
Awesome. So have a couple of questions that came in over the past couple of days and definitely want to get to it. Also have a list of questions myself. By the way, guys, if you have any questions on Airbnb whatsoever, feel free to drop them on Facebook or on Instagram or YouTube, wherever you're watching, and we'll make sure to get to them. The first one is, what do you look for when selecting a new property for Airbnb? I guess, let's say that someone is considering Airbnb their property. They're tired of landlording. How do you know if it's going to be a good Airbnb property or not?
So first up is regulation. Regulation comes in two parts. So first, you want to look at the municipal regulation. Does the city regulate it at all? And what are the requirements for it? And second of all, is it freehold or not? So if you're in a condo board or any sort, a townhouse condo, you want to check your condo documents to see if they even allow it. How you can check that is normally you just go through the condo documents to see if there's any reference to minimum lease days. So if they say, hey, your minimum lease terms have to be 60 days, 90 days, they're basically telling you that you're not allowed to do short-term rentals.
Yeah, once you're past that regulation stage, everything's good. Then that's when you start looking at numbers and seeing like if there's demand for short-term rentals and midterm rentals. So ideally, like the best properties are the ones in which like you can do short-term rentals in the summer and then you can do midterm rentals in the winter. Most properties, like I'd say, like in Ontario, even in Canada, I think most properties don't do as well in the winter. So having like a good source of midterm clients, right? So having a hospital nearby, for example, having lots of schools nearby, those certainly help. And then you just run your numbers on AirDNA. Price Labs is a tool as well. See how well the nearby properties are doing, right? And depending on what your model is, depending if you're going to hire a co-host or if you're going to do it yourself, if you're doing it yourself, you're looking for at least a 30-40% lift compared to long-term rentals, at least to break even, right? With all the extra costs that are involved with running an Airbnb. If you're hiring a co-host and you want more of a lift, like 50-60%, right? Depending on how much commission they're charging. So if all those numbers make sense, we've seen in cases people like are okay taking running an Airbnb at break even or even a small loss compared to long-term rentals because of all the other benefits it brings.
Right. Okay, so you mentioned a couple of things there that I think we should dive into. You mentioned something called AirDNA. Could you explain what that is?
Yeah, we have a love and hate relationship with AirDNA. Like with anything technology, it's better than doing all the work manually. But again, you got to apply your own judgment. So what it helps us, it's basically like a scalping platform. What AirDNA does is every night it goes on to all the listings on Airbnb, Vrbo, whatever the booking platforms. Someone
Hotels,
might be
right?
hotels. Not so much. Okay. That's something you can use in Price Labs to do your pricing, but strictly AirDNA, it looks mainly like 90% of your pricing decisions are based on other Airbnb units. Maybe 10% is based on hotel prices, and then it looks at if it compares the calendar of a property to the previous day. It records what prices they were charging the previous night, and then if something's blocked on the calendar, it assumes that those properties were booked at the rate that they were advertised. So that's a big caveat, right? People could be like blocking the calendar for personal use. People might only be making their listing available for 4 months of the year, and then AirDNA assumes they have occupancy for the full year. But there's several checks you can do to eliminate all of this. But essentially, what it will help you do is come up with an estimate on how many nights a property is booked, how much money they're making, what their occupancy numbers are, all of that.
Awesome. So it gives you a good sort of pulse on competition as well, and seeing how, obviously there's going to be some noise to that data, as you mentioned, but you can it's better than no data at all. So it's giving you at least like a decent understanding of what competitors are doing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. And then the other thing is in regards to expenses, right? So you did mention, profitability of Airbnb. Some people are willing to operate. You need like 30% more in revenue to be able to break even or to be able to justify it compared to a long-term rental?
Correct.
Why is that? Because like 30% is quite a decent amount more. Is that like also easily achievable, or is that relatively difficult? And also break down the expenses. I know it's a loaded question.
Yeah, for sure. Let's start with the expenses, right? Let's say a property, the rent is $3,000, right? Easily in utilities alone, which you'll be responsible for now that you're a short-term rental landlord. That alone is like an extra 10-15%, right? So on top of the utilities, now you got to consider stuff like consumables, right? Like you got to replenish toilet paper, paper towels, all that for the guests. You're paying for internet. Your insurance is going to go up by a lot. Maybe not a lot, but at least, budget for 2-3%. You will be responsible for lawn maintenance and snow removal. I know that's a tricky area because you got to sign a separate agreement with your tenant anyway. You might have to compensate them for it, but let's assume you find a tenant, who is going to take care of all of those things for you. That will be an incremental cost, right, as an Airbnb operator. So utilities alone, 10-15%, extra insurance premium, 2-3%, stocking up consumables, 5%, right? And then lawn maintenance, snow removal, all that stuff, like easily an extra 5-10%. And this is before you hire a co-host. If you're hiring someone to help you with these things, then add an extra 15-20% for that as well. And your second question is that still achievable? Yes, it is. Before COVID, like around that COVID period, I'd say like 80-90% of the markets where we were operating, that was easily achievable and more, right? So everyone was really happy. But since like the last couple of years,
after that COVID surge,
it's still possible, but only in a handful of cities and areas. But people are still doing it, right? Because there's other benefits to Airbnb. You avoid the landlord tenant board in Ontario, which is a pain. You get the flexibility with the property, right? You can sell your property whenever you want. It always remains in good condition. So there's less turnover expenses when the tenant moves out, when you're trying to get the property ready for sale. So people are still doing it, but it's not as lucrative as it used to be.
I mean, that's a big one, right? Like it's in much better condition because I've gone through multiple tenant turnovers right now. As you could, for those who follow me on Instagram, see it. I mean, how often are you cleaning your property when a tenant's there? Never, right? When it comes to an Airbnb, you probably clean it every couple of days, right? And you inspect it every couple of days as well.
Yeah.
I'm not proud to say I often don't inspect my rental properties until someone leaves, right? And obviously that's not fun when you deal with those hidden expenses. I just realized we had a couple of questions come in through Facebook. Guys, if you're leaving it on different platforms, I will get to it. It's just I will have to hop around platforms for now. Okay, so one of the questions, I'm actually not sure what arbitrage alliance is. Are you guys aware or have you heard of that before?
Arbitrage alliances?
I don't know. Thoughts? I assume maybe
Airbnb arbitrage?
Yeah. Feel free to clarify. Why don't we just answer it from the perspective of Airbnb arbitrage? What is it? I know we talked about it at the beginning, but what is it? And what are some things to consider when you're arbitraging, and how does it work?
That's a loaded question. I'll let Aahil explain what it is first, and then we'll kind of dive into, I guess, pros and cons and our experience with it too. Like I said, we did do a full year and a half of Airbnb arbitrage, and we've pivoted, and we can kind of dive into why we did that.
Yeah, in a nutshell, like you're basically just you're the long-term tenant if you're doing Airbnb arbitrage, right? Instead of signing the lease with a typical tenant, a typical family, the landlord will sign the lease with you, your corporation, and then you're paying the same monthly rent that someone else would to the landlord. And in return, they give you the permission to, sublease the unit on Airbnb, and then whatever money you make on Airbnb, other platforms, whatever it is, less the rent, utilities, other expenses, that's your profit. Essentially, like it allows you, the way I think of it as like running hotels, right? Like just think of running a hotel, and it essentially allows you to convert any apartment, any property into a hotel and start hosting people who may be in the city for shorter or like slightly longer periods.
So when we did it, like kind of when we were full blown in arbitrage, it was 2022.
Yeah, 2021, 2022.
Yeah, so it's kind of near the tail end of that COVID surge. It still was doing really well. Our profits were quite good, but just within that year, very quickly, even near the end, we saw a huge dip in it. Sure, we got like the summer surge and everything, but things were really, it wasn't really good. Our margins were cut in half, even within the year.
I think we basically came down from 30-40% margins all the way down to 15% margins, and then on top of that, I think like the money part we could still like justify. Money wasn't bad, but what was the sticking point was like working with some very difficult landlords, right? Especially when people are essentially breaking even, the landlord, right, on their property with the rents that we're paying, and any unexpected expenses come up, they try and push it onto us as something that the guest did instead of it being a wear and tear. So there's that conflict of interest, like perpetually, I'd say, between you and the landlord. The landlord's trying to push on certain expenses that should fall under wear and tear as like guest damages, right? And for example, I think the worst example was there was a property where the AC broke down. in the middle of the summer, and the landlord was taking his time to, get quotes and all that.
His options, which he's allowed to do as a landlord. Like he was
Yeah.
answering us, but he's like, I'm waiting for a few quotes. But then from an Airbnb perspective, that like we can't have that happen. Like the guests,
especially during summer, right? Where that's where most of the money. Yeah.
Keep in mind, these things always happen during heat waves too. So, it was just crazy. And then like HVAC companies were quoting him higher prices because everyone's AC was breaking down. So he wanted to wait. And these things happen all the time, so.
I think another example is like when the landlord wanted to like sell the house, right? And then working with the Airbnb guest on showings, right? Like it's just not possible, right? Like how many people are going to give you permission to go into their house in the middle of a stay? So the way we got around it was, disclosing it before they even booked, but then that limited the number of people that would book our place. And, we had to charge lower rates to make up for it. So all these things that we were pretty naive about, we didn't think about.
Yeah. We also were not we scaled it really quickly. So I think we kind of went from 0 to 40 units within the year just on arbitrage alone. And when you're scaling that quickly, obviously you're just learning as you go along. So our earlier arbitrage units, they weren't the quality that it should have been. And we overlooked that. And so then that impacted us, right? So, and then when we tell the owner, like, hey, can you improve these things? It's that they just say it's on us, and it kind of is, like from a landlord tenant perspective, like they weren't things that were actually affecting the stay, but Airbnb standards just take it to a whole different level, So there was just a lot of back and forth that just kind of, I think it, it just burned us out, I think, really. And it was just exhausting to always be fighting with the landlord, essentially, like having that conflict. So like Aahil said, even though the money could still be justified, but then layering on these issues, it just didn't make sense for us. Oh, the other thing too is sometimes when the home's just not available is that, then we can't rent it out on Airbnb. And then again, that cut into our profits. So eventually we just kind of moved into the management model. We originally didn't like that management model because we're like, oh, then the landlord's more involved. But it kind of works out better because your interests are more aligned.
Right, exactly. No, that makes a lot of sense. And like I think that's the same with not just Airbnb, with any business. Like for those who know my story, I scaled up quite quickly when buying properties, and I ran into a ton of issues, right? Leverage being one of them. The other one is that like not knowing what to look out for with real estate properties, right? And understanding that, now that I have all of these like older properties, I'm running into a lot of capital expenditures, like roofs, right? Like furnaces, et cetera, et cetera. And this eats into your cash flow. Just like the growing pains, and you learn as you sort of break into something new, right? One of the things you mentioned is that, so your Airbnbs that you set up, initially when you were getting started, they weren't fully optimized, right? So I want to jump into the design aspect, because of course now you guys are super experienced in this. You still operate 60 plus Airbnbs. Like, what do you do when you look at maximizing design, and how much does that tie to actual occupancy rates?
So in terms of design is that, one of the trends over the years is definitely, like when we first started Airbnb, you could probably design it you'd set up an empty property for significantly cheaper than what you do today, just because of the sheer increased supply on the market, right? So you're just competing against more units. So design is really important for you to stand out so that people are willing to justify the price, or even people that are price sensitive, when you're priced the same as with other units, is that you want to stand out against them. We do work with various budgets with people, is that end of the day, it's the owner's expense to furnish it in the management model. So it's a bit of a sticky situation that you need to balance, right? Because people aren't just convinced that they should spend $10,000 more in furnishing, because that will translate to better revenue. But there is definitely a direct improvement on your revenue performance the better designed it is. And keep in mind, design isn't just like, how flashy it looks. It's also, I consider it the guest experience, so there's some owners that design it really beautifully, beautiful artwork, pops of color everywhere, fully renovated. But then when you actually live in there and walk in there, it's really bare bones. What I mean is that it's a place that sleeps 6 people, but then there's only 4 plates, right? 4 bowls, 4 spoons and forks. There's no vacuum. There's no, the pillows are not comfortable. table. It's a small little bistro dining table of some sort. So, you know, you have to really think about the guest experience side of things, because even if it's really well designed, then people come in and it's just kind of like a showroom rather than an Airbnb experience that they're looking for.
And speaking on for sort of design, you mentioned $10,000. Is that sort of the average cost to furnish an Airbnb? How big are we talking about? Are we talking about like an entire home, a condo unit? I know there's so many different factors, but can we talk about one, the cost a bit more specifically, and two, what type of furniture and equipment is like mandatory with Airbnbs that a lot of people may overlook or forget about?
Yeah. So in terms of, so let's say what the average,
Let's say
let's say
one bedroom,
Toronto.
yeah, one bedroom condo will be probably 8 to 12,000, right? 12,000 is what you really need to for it to be really competitive, really pop up. But you can get by spending 7, 8,000, and then maybe add another 2,000. So if it's a 2 bedroom, you're looking at 10 to 14. But in terms of the vendors, you gotta take that.
Yeah, in terms of vendors, we actually recommend some of the lower quality ones. What I mean by that is like more IKEA and Wayfair kind of quality. We don't actually normally go for more expensive things, just because even for we've tried it, you know, with both sides of things, and the more expensive stuff actually don't stand the test of time. In fact, sometimes they're actually more delicate, and it doesn't pay off in the long run. You know, for example, if you have a really expensive dresser that's made of pure wood, it still scratches the same. In fact, actually, the IKEA stuff hold up better against scratches and stuff like that. So most of our orders are IKEA and Amazon, and they actually ship faster, so you can get set up faster in that way. But
I'd say don't cheap out on your mattress and your couch. Those are the
Yeah.
couple things you shouldn't cheap out on. Mattress, we at least do 10 inches. You
Yeah.
can get a 10-inch mattress for $400. I mean, we're not trying to look for a $200, $150 mattress. Yes, those are
but
available.
don't get like $1,000 mattress
Yes,
either.
don't get that either. So
Yeah.
just finding the right balance so that you can, like achieve your, get your payback sooner.
Yeah.
And also like optimize guest experience.
Things I would say that a lot of people may miss is that definitely invest in a really good smart lock, you know, one that integrates. Security is a top priority in an Airbnb. So a lot of people like to just find the cheapest keypad lock that they can find on Amazon, which doesn't always work for various reasons. And then, you know, definitely get a good security camera as well. Other things are, like I think I touched about before, is think about the whole guest experience, you know? So I think a good example I like to say is people really like things to be aesthetic, which is really important. So I say, like, for example, when people put a garbage bin in the kitchen, they like a tiny one that fits under the kitchen sink, which we actually hate because you put one takeout box in it and it's full. And then the guests are just going through lots of garbage bags, and they don't even like that, right? They have to take it to the garbage chute or the garbage room, wherever it is. So we say you need at least like a 25-liter garbage bin. Even if it sits next to the kitchen island and it's ugly, I don't care. It's more functional. You know, you don't need to picture it. So, but it's in there. And honestly, we've never had a guest complain that your garbage bin is ugly and you should have had one under the kitchen sink.
Yeah, in terms of the vendors, I'd say like for the lock, we use a Schlegen code. For the camera, we use the Ring and Blink. For the furniture, we use Zionist a lot. For the mattresses, for the bed frames even, they're really reasonable.
Are those found in Amazon, all of these brands?
Yeah.
Amazon, yeah, all of it, pretty much. I think like I can't even remember. Do we even use IKEA for anything? There's some items like that are cheaper on IKEA, but like they take a while to ship. And
you also need to understand proximity. If you're like so far away from an IKEA, disaster, right?
Amazon is our preferred vendor along with Walmart.
I've also just had bad experiences with IKEA. Like, we've placed the big orders on it and then they'll cancel it for no reason, and then you're just like replacing it again, whereas Amazon's much more seamless.
How about Facebook Marketplace? Or would you stray away?
No write-off, yeah. It really depends, right? If you're getting a really good deal, maybe if you're getting something for $30 when it's like $100 on Amazon, we can maybe justify it from a write-off perspective in that case, or even $50. But the whole logistics of sending someone to pick it up, like because it's difficult, right? If you're picking it up yourself, maybe you can justify a bit more. But if you have to send someone to pick it up, that same person will, take it to the property, set it up. It's just the benefit is very marginal at that point.
Would you be able? Someone asks for the mattress and bed frame company. How do you spell it? What is it called again?
It's ZINUS.
ZINUS for both of them, right? And it's found on Amazon.
Correct.
Okay, I'm just typing it there. So okay, perfect. So is there any specific features that will improve performance? And is it honestly mandatory? There are things that are nice to have, right? But from your experience, is there any small cheap things or hacks that you include that would help significantly?
Cheap things. I'm just thinking of what cheap things.
Is it like free breakfast?
Let's talk about more expensive things. Yeah, the hot tub for sure. I think like hot tub, like across our portfolio, we have like 5 or 6 properties with hot tubs, and they consistently do better. Versus properties without a hot tub, you think like it's only in the winter where you see that bump, right? Of course, in the winter, the outperformance is significant. Like we're probably making $2,000-3,000 more per month, right, compared to something without a hot tub. But we even see that like outperformance in the summer, in the spring. I think like it's just properties with hot tubs, they just attract more attention. We're able to build up more reviews, all of that, and that helps us to even get higher rates in the summer, even though people may not be using the hot tub as much in the summer. So hot tub for sure, hot tub and sauna. Sauna not as much as the hot tub, but it does help if you.
It's a good secondary complement.
Yeah, if you don't want to spend as much as you would tip, like hot tub will be like 30 grand if you don't, with the foundation, electrical, sometimes 40 as well. But sauna could be a lot cheaper, and it's a close second. What else? Other than that,
I think like we've also noticed recently, like having a TV like in your living room is a no-brainer, but then adding a secondary TV to the master bedroom also helps a lot. Like we've also gotten a lot of inquiries or requests from guests asking, hey, do you have a TV in the bedroom? Just because, especially if it's families, because the parents like to be away from the children, like the children have their own play area and then the adults have their own area.
Oh, in the rec room.
Right. Yeah. So kind of same. Yeah. Oh, right. Rec room. Yeah. So like things like a foosball table, air hockey table, ping pong table of any sort, and then kind of conglomerating it in a rec room definitely helps with that side of things, especially if you are attracting families or larger groups in that area.
Yeah, I feel like if you can get guests talking in the review about stuff that no other listing has, right? Like, like maybe like if someone's staying in Toronto, they might talk about the location of your listing, how comfortable the beds are, but like take it a step further, get them talking about, how cool the rec room was, how they were able to keep their kids occupied, depending on the clientele you're attracting. That will and that way like Airbnb will push the listing to other people who have a similar profile. They'll read your reviews and book more, and then you'll be able to get higher rates.
Is there anything on the listing that that would help the listing get occupied more? Like, do you allow pets? Do you like the small stuff like that? Is there things that you do that tend to help occupancy a bit more? And those things are like free, right? Just maybe causes a bit more damage.
I'd say pets for sure. We've noticed, like especially in slow season when demand's really low, like it really helps. And we've seen like like listings where we allow pets, they outperform the listing where we don't allow pets, even accounting for all those extra damages, extra cleaning fees, because on average like only 10 to 15% of the listings allow pets, but I'd say like maybe 25 to 30% people are traveling with pets, right? So there's a mismatch, right, in demand and supply already in most markets, right? I mean, if you go to cottages, a lot of cottages, just because lots of people are traveling with pets, they're forced to allow pets. But if you look at more the suburban markets, there's a mismatch. So for sure, pets helps. Cleaning fee as well, like we hide hide the cleaning fees by using like management fees, stuff like that. Just from a psychological perspective, it just reduces any barriers to booking. Like the worst type of question you can get is, hey, I'll come to your property, I'll clean it after myself, can you please waive the cleaning fee, right? Like avoids those kind of questions.
Yeah, no, that's actually very smart. Just it's the exact same thing, it's the exact same cost. You just you reframe it, right? Which is what negotiation really is. It's just reframing things. And then that's a cool tip. That's a cool tip for sure. We had a question come in. Now this is very market specific. I'm not sure if you guys have operated in Windsor. This individual asks if you have any personal experience with Airbnb in Windsor. No, doesn't, I guess, like duplexes, could be single, like just what is your experience with Windsor in general, if you've had any?
Yeah,
we had an arbitrage property.
We have 2 arbitrage properties there before regulation kicked in, and I believe there is regulation, and I think it's the principal residence requirement. So definitely, if it's not your principal residence, you wouldn't be allowed. But let's talk about our experience when we were still able to do it in that free market. It was What was it?
I think it was good. Like,
I
you
can't
know,
remember too
yeah.
much.
I'd say like it was
just
not
about
outstanding.
average.
I'd say
Yeah.
like, yeah, like Toronto for sure, right? Like if you have a license, if you can operate there, Toronto for sure outperforms. Niagara on the Lake is another good area, but like, yeah, like it was not in that extraordinary range, but it was not the worst either. It was just like, yeah, right in the middle.
I think the
Mhm.
best profile out there were contractors as well, and I think it was related to a lot of investors
Right.
kind of building. And I think there was like a casino building there, so there was a lot of that. I don't know what it's turned out to be recently. Like we said, it was a couple years ago that we did that, but that was that made the biggest population of our guest profiles.
Yeah.
Now, what I want to dive into is duplexes, right? Like, have you operated an Airbnb where there's a long-term tenant in one unit, Airbnb in another, and how does that dynamic shake out?
It usually doesn't work well.
It's 50-50. No, I think it's 50-50. Sometimes it just depends. It's just like when
It's
you're
better
there.
when the long-term tenant is in the basement. It works better if the long-term tenant is in the upper unit. They control the thermostat. You know, they're usually paying a bit more than someone who's in the basement, so they're a bit pickier, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, if the long-term tenant's in the basement, it's not been that big a deal, right? Because you know their basements are usually the cheapest properties. They don't have much high standards. They're not as picky. But someone in the upstairs, they change the thermostat to their liking. They're, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. I think it
So,
just depends on that the tenant themselves. Like, are they ones that to complain more often or not? And that will just really just some. So I'll talk about where it's really good. Where the tenant is really cooperative is the tenant can help the landlord with some things that are more cost effective. So, for example, they can take garbage to the curb and back for that. The Airbnb unit, take care of snow removal and lawn maintenance. So, and that getting your tenant to do is usually cheaper than hiring a like third party contractor.
it's like keeping them employed almost, right? It's like, hey, like we have some side jobs that you can make money on, right?
Yes,
And
exactly.
they're happy as well. No, that totally makes sense.
Mhm.
So I guess it sounds like from a profitability point of view, not much different. It's just management is more headache, right? It's like
Yeah. Ideally, you can just do Airbnb in both, or just do long-term tenants in both. That's the ideal case. But you know, like if for some reason you wanna, you know, like the market for long-term tenants is not good, you're struggling to find someone, you know, who'll pay on time, who has a good profile, then you know, definitely consider Airbnb one of the units.
so we actually got this question again. So we did answer this. I want to ask you from a homeowner point of view though, right? Have you been managing Airbnbs? Actually, why don't we get to this question that someone asked, and then I'll ask you the one I was thinking of. But you did mention this a couple of times, management business model. Would you be able to elaborate on that a bit more?
Yeah, for sure. So what it is there's an owner. Let's say Austin, you have a rental that's coming up, and you're, usually rent it out, but now you're considering doing Airbnb on it, but you don't have the time or expertise or even interest in managing it, right? And how to vet guests, how to price your units, how to even get it furnished, and all the details about it, right? Like what happens when a guest damages it, violates your rules. There's just so much you don't know, don't have time for. So you hire someone to help you do it, and that's what Airbnb management is. So we'll come in, we'll help you. If it's not furnished already, give you advice on how to furnish it, contacts on people that can help you furnish it, get it listed. So getting it listed is two parts. We always say one, you want to market it, which is always the easier part, what people think of the most, but also include important disclosures on there, right? It's not, you can't just over market your property, right? It really depends on your asset, and there's policies on Airbnb that you have to disclose properly. Otherwise, just like long-term tenants, like there's professional tenants, there's also professional guests. Like if they know the rules and they're like, oh, you didn't include this disclosure, now I can get a refund. So, making sure that, we're really familiar with all those rules to include it in your description. Then we're going to make sure that we're taking care of vetting the guests, placing the guests, preparing them for check-in. Guests will always have questions when they arrive, simple, anything from simple to more complicated. If there's anything that actually needs to be attended to, facilitating that, and arranging for cleaners. So again, cleaners is also a multiple area thing. So where they're not just cleaning, they also have to help you report any damages, because if there are damages, then there's a whole other process for that on if and how you can claim damages on Airbnb.
Gotcha. Yeah. So essentially, property management
Mhm.
for the Airbnb for people who are looking to get into short-term rentals.
That's
But obviously, much more work that you guys need to do because Airbnb is much more active than just simple long-term tenants who are paying month to month, right?
That's why the fees that we charge are also like almost double of like, what a long-term property manager would charge.
Yeah.
Just to justify all the extra work and costs involved on our end as well.
But you also have to consider the increase in revenue as well, right? So it's not double, but the same revenue. It's double, but the revenue also goes up proportionately, if not more as well. So
correct.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. And then, pricing strategy. I know we didn't dive into that too deep into that, but for someone who is new in Airbnb, they're trying to figure out what should I price this at. Is there any specific methodology you guys usually go through? Do you start cheap and then increase the price when you have more reviews? Certain seasons where you increase it, decrease it? Would love to hear more about it.
Yeah, for sure. So it just comes down to whether or not you have Price Labs or any other pricing software. So let's say you don't have Price Labs, right? In that case, like it's fairly straightforward. You just go look at comps similar to anything in real estate, see like how much other people with similar amenities, same number of bedrooms, bathrooms are charging, and then try and match their price as the dates come closer and you're still unbooked. Go and revisit those comps and like try. For example, you're only one day away from from a weekend night, then you trying to be the cheapest listing in the market, right? But the farther out you go, the higher your prices, and in the top percentile of the market you're trying to show up. If you have Price Labs, right, then that tool is going to do most of these things for you, right? It's going to adjust for last minute prices. It's going to look at like occupancy data in the neighborhood, see how many other listings are booked, see how much they're charging, and try and get you, for example, for dates that are not that far away, might trying to get you in that 5 to 10 percentile, so in the bottom tier of the market. But if something's 2-3 months out, it will try and price you in the top 90th percentile, so you can try and fetch as high a price as possible. So it's just like trying to figure out the highest possible price someone will pay, right, without sacrificing too much on, because you want to lock in that customer too as soon as possible. There's like an ideal window, right? For each property it's different. For like let's say a 1-bedroom property, if someone's not booked and you're more than 2 weeks out, you want to start dropping your prices. But for a 5-6 bedroom home, you want to start locking in people like 2-3 months in advance, right? So it really depends on the property too.
So you mentioned those, like, there are a ton of different softwares that we've talked about throughout. And there's obviously, so AirDNA, you mentioned a limitation. Price Labs, it sounds like that's like a dynamic pricing tool. Airbnb has, I think Airbnb has an internal one, right?
Yes, they call it.
Good. Avoid it.
First, it depends on your resources, right? If you only have one property, right, then you could probably use smart pricing as the first layer of pricing, and then tag on your judgment by looking at comps, right? But if you have multiple properties, and of course don't use smart pricing. If you're doing it for other people, they're relying on you to make sure that you know what you're doing, right? So you're able to extract the highest possible value. So in those cases, for sure, use Price Labs. Don't leave money on the table. But if you have only one or two, I'd say it's still fine as long as you're still looking at the comps. Don't solely rely on smart pricing from Airbnb.
Awesome. So we'll try to bang through all of these questions. This is a quick one. Do you do coaching?
So we don't have a coaching program or session where we go through different modules of anything, but we definitely offer Ask Me Anything coaching. So, if you kind of guide it, you tell us what your issues are. If there's a specific property even that you're looking at or a specific area, we can dive into all the details about it. And we charge by the hour for that.
Awesome. This is, I'm not even sure if you guys would be able to answer this because every city and province is completely different, right? But is there any? Why don't I position it this way? Is there any cities, areas, or types of properties, whatever it is, that is easier to Airbnb than others? So we know Toronto is a relatively difficult market. Mm-hmm. Are there any more pro Airbnb provinces or cities?
Yeah, I'd say outside of Ontario, on the East Coast, both Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, we operate in both those provinces. They're both relatively lax in terms of regulations. Nova Scotia, still they brought in regulations last year, but even if it's not your principal residence, you can still Airbnb, similar to what Calgary used to be, but Calgary's cracking down. So on the West Coast, there's Calgary, Edmonton, right, on the East Coast, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. In New Brunswick, we're in a few cities. We're in Moncton, Shediac, Bathurst. In Nova Scotia, we're near Halifax, and there's another like cottage country of near Halifax. It's called Wentworth. So yeah, like we're there, and the regulations wise, it's laxer
as of now.
Yeah,
we always tell people, you know, especially if you're planning to buy a property for the intention to Airbnb, just always have multiple exit plans because they can change it. The city can change it overnight, and they have, like, I think an example is Niagara on the Lake in Ontario. They were very pro short-term rentals. You know, there's a whole licensing program, really, really good. They fully allow it. There's no limitation on the number of days or principal residence. But September of last year, they actually, and it's in light of all the federal political things that happened, that's targeting Airbnb. So Niagara on the Lake has actually paused their program, that they no longer are processing any more new applications. So, you know, it literally happened overnight. It's a really crappy situation. We actually had a client who actually bought a property, was in the process of applying it before, but she had to make changes to her property to comply. And by the time she was done making those changes, they implemented that new rule. So, you know, just be really agile with your investment strategies.
No, very good point. Okay, so someone asked, personal residence, so primary, 2-bed, 2-bath unit, sounds like a condo. Is it lucrative to Airbnb 1 room? Okay, so I mean, what are your thoughts on shared housing and then Airbnb being a bedroom, and, you know, you're sharing common areas?
It takes some getting used to. We've done it before, right? Personally too. But as long as you can get the pass through the first, you know, 3 to 5 guests, you know, you get used to sharing your common spaces, your living area, kitchen with a stranger. And then also you just have to be a bit stricter with, you know, asking questions. In terms of when people ask you, just be a bit more stricter compared to when they're booking an entire home, because you'll be like living with them, right? As long as you get through those first few guests and you ask questions, make sure you avoid the really bad problematic guests. Like usually, like it works really well. Honestly, it's like extra side income without much work. To be honest, right? It can be pretty passive. Because once you get someone into the house, they can just ask you questions. You don't need to be monitoring messages. Right? But yeah, you just need to get that past that mental barrier of living with a stranger.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it. I would say from a financial perspective, my biggest tip though is make it single occupancy only. Don't allow 2 people ever. I think that was definitely our first mistake when we started. It just creates more noise, more use. Usually when it's single occupancy, people will just stay in their rooms, which is great because there's like less like usage of the common areas. But when it's 2 people, they like to split up a lot. One person will be in the living room, dining room, and the other person in the bedroom.
Yeah, I guess you got to ask yourself, how much is that extra $300-400 worth a month to you, right? Yes, you can advertise double occupancy for an extra $300, but is it really worth your peace of mind, right?
Right. No, that makes sense. Okay. And I guess, you know, when you sort of to carry on that point, like that's obviously much more feasible in areas like Toronto and stuff where Airbnb, correct me if I'm wrong, generally needs to be with their primary, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so someone asked, you mentioned that you write off furniture expenses. What else are common categories of expenses you write off with Airbnb?
Pretty much
everything else. So your consumables when you're buying paper, toiletries, linens, towels, your internet expense, utilities. Keep in mind though too, this is not accounting tax advice, but like, you know, if you're operating illegally though, you are not actually technically allowed to write off those expenses, but let's play along that you are allowed to. Any maintenance expenses as well. So lawn care, snow care, your cleaners as well that you pay, so long you are getting receipts from your cleaner. So if you're just paying them cash, you're not receiving receipts and invoices from your cleaners, you won't be able to write that off.
I think that's an important point that a lot of people don't know actually, which we didn't know either, because a lot of people think that an e-transfer is an invoice or a receipt.
It's a proof of.
It is not, right? If you ever get audited, CRA would not accept an e-transfer on your banking statement as proof of invoice or payment. So make sure you get actual invoices and receipts. And even for those, there's like specific requirements, right? The cleaner needs to put their name, their company name, their address, the address of the property that was serviced, what price they're charging. If they're charging HST, they need to put their HST number. So all these requirements have to be met, right, for it to be called an invoice in the eyes of the CRA. So make sure you know all these things.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So don't pay cash, guys, unless there's a receipt.
Good deal.
Yeah.
So any comments on Cornwall, Kingston, Thousand Islands area for Airbnb? I guess another way to also sort of answer this question is what due diligence would you recommend? If so, because you can easily take any of these cities and enter a new city, right? What due diligence do you go down to figure out, is this a decent area to Airbnb?
So I think like we touched on it before too, right? Like making sure that there's demand for both short-term rentals and mid-term rentals, because most cities that we operate in Ontario, they're like dead in the winter. So for example, Kingston, there's a school there, right? Yeah, there's a university there.
So
for sure, that will be a positive towards that winter period, because honestly, like most of your money is made in the summer, but if you make no money in the winter, you can easily go from being 15-20% profitable into a loss position very, very easily, right? So for example, Kingston, like we said, there's a school there for sure. Yes, in the summer it will do well, but see, maybe get someplace close to a hospital, right? So there's constant demand throughout the year, or maybe there's some project, maybe like a factory where there's like seasonal workers that are coming, a mine, whatever it is. Make sure there's demand from multiple sources so you're not stuck.
Mm-hmm. So I guess it's obviously doing that market research and just thinking, why would someone come here? Let me ask you this. I mean, for summer months, anywhere you go, I assume it's pretty strong. Is it like where the market research really shines is during off season?
I would say so. I think that really makes or breaks it, right? Because in the summer, like I'd say, like for most of our properties, 2/3 of the money is made in the summer, but that 1/3 in the winter or in the fall months, it's still important, right? Because it makes all the difference at the end of the day. Every dollar counts.
Awesome. Let's talk about numbers a bit. How do you forecast revenue and expenses before launching a new listing?
So revenue, like we just gotta try our best with the tools that we have, right? AirDNA being one of those, and then Price Labs also has like a revenue estimator. So basically, what you do in both of these tools, you go, punch in your address, and then you put your number of bedrooms, put number of bathrooms, and then you try, like setting filters to deal with those data problems that we talked about, right? So over time, these tools have gotten better, so they're better able to understand when someone's blocking their own listing for personal use versus when it's an actual booking, right? So it helps you actually filter for those owner blocks, right? So you're looking for listings that's live on Airbnb or other platforms for at least three quarters of the year, so 270 days or more. Look at listings that are professionally managed. There's filters that you can set. Listings that have 20 reviews or more, and then put the same number of bedrooms and bathrooms that you have, and then once you have that down, it will give you a list of comps. Then you just gotta sift through those comps, filter some more out based on because for some of the comps, AirDNA will give you like 100,000 revenue estimate, but when you actually go and click on the listing, you'll see they only have 2 reviews, or even with 20 reviews, you can go and see like big chunks of their calendars are blocked. So you just got to remove all the noise from your data. Once you've done that, like be conservative. Don't look at the highest performing listing in your area. Yes, you will have the potential to match them, right? If you do all the things they're doing, but like save yourself, some level of conservatism is good. Maybe assume you'll do maybe like 5% less than them, or look at the next tier of listings and then just take the average of the next 5 and then just go from there. That's on the revenue piece. Expenses, like it depends. Expenses, I'd say it's a lot easier to forecast once you have it down. So furnishing a 1-bedroom condo anywhere from 8 to 12,000. A 2-bedroom condo, for each additional bedroom, keep on adding 2,000, right? For an additional living area or rec room, add another 2,000. If you're furnishing a home versus a condo, then add a couple thousand there, because you have to get outdoor furniture, maybe a barbecue, really deck out that outdoor space. So furnishing is easy. Other stuff, you already know, mortgage, insurance, that stuff, it's highly predictable, right? And then maintenance as well. Like you can fairly get a good idea how much lawn maintenance, snow removal, all that stuff is going to be.
Is the main variable one on the expense item just going to be cleaning and toiletries then?
Yeah, for the most part. And cleaning, I'd say like it's a pass-through expense. It's something you collect from the guest on each booking anyway. So yeah, toiletries, like whatever your cleaning fee is, just bump up your cleaning fee by $10, right? To make up for the toiletries you have to provide for every reservation.
Oh,
Right. So
that's
that would
smart.
like, yeah.
Right. So the cleaning fees can not only recapture the cleaning, but it could be as long as it sounds like basically it's comparable. It's like how do you
Yeah.
decide you're not overpaying for a property? You look at other listings and you adjust, right? If one's a 3-bedroom and you're buying a 2-bedroom, you adjust. Like how much value does that change things, et cetera, et cetera. It's that, but on the Airbnb side of it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Same principles.
Awesome. Okay. So you did mention insurance coverage in Airbnb. So I mean, obviously there's two insurances. One that Airbnb provides, from my understanding, and two, you actually have to get insurance for the house, right? Would you be able to dive in on both of those topics?
Sure. Yeah. Let's start with Airbnb insurance. Like honestly, it's one of the most comprehensive products we've seen in the industry. So the best part being the deductible is $0. Like most zero deductible policies, like they cost you a fortune, right? Whether that's your car, your home. Right. So Airbnb zero deductible policy, you can go after the guest for something as little as $20, like a staying cheat. Will we always go after the guest for something like that? Maybe not, right? But you can if you wanted to. For liability, it's up to 3 million USD. So if something happens to the guest while they're staying in your property and they sue you for damages, you're covered up to 3 million USD. For damages that the guest does to your property, it's 1 million USD. If you're on other platforms except Airbnb, none of them, like to our knowledge, they provide damage coverage to your property. They only provide liability coverage to the guest if something happens to them in your property. So booking.com, Verbo. So if you're with one of those, you got to integrate a product like Superhog. I think they changed their name now. But yeah, you gotta like get one of those products so you can get covered for damages that the guest causes to your property. So that's Airbnb versus other platforms when it comes to the platform provided insurance, and then on your own like homeowners insurance. A lot of people ask us if it's so comprehensive, why do we even need it? It's just that you never know when Airbnb is going to change their policies. They change their policies every 3 months, and we just gotta fight them out with them, figure out. But yeah, you never know when they're gonna change their policies. You don't know when they're gonna deny a claim, and in those cases, it's recommended to like have your own insurance policy to fall back on. The deductible could be high, right? So you can save a bit on premiums, right? Because you're only gonna use your own insurance policies for bigger claims. Things to look out for. Make sure I think the biggest one will be make sure they provide coverage for 365 days of the year if you're going to be doing short-term rentals, right? Make sure that there's no like clauses that if you need to check the property after every guest, the property can only be vacant for this many days between reservations. All right, so check for all these things. But yeah, I think like the market has improved a lot. There's a lot of brokers and insurance products in Canada that support, maybe not arbitrage, but they support like homeowners insurance for sure.
Right. That makes sense. Okay, awesome. So, I remember when I was looking into it at the beginning, people just sort of skirted around that gray area, but it sounds there's more comprehensive coverage out there, which is great. And I guess if people are looking for insurance, do you guys have a broker that you usually, you don't have to like shout them out right now, but I assume there's a broker that you work with frequently, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we have a broker that helps us.
How do you ensure a 5-star rating? Like, I get everything, communication, follow. Like, would you be able to break that down? And where do you find? I'm sure operating 60 units, not everything can be 5 stars. Where do you find that things fall short? Like, is there like a pattern that you notice?
Yeah, so let's tackle the first part of that question. So I think for us, how we can, try and reach for 5-star ratings as much as possible is your systems and also communication. So it's responding really quickly to guests, but also providing them quality responses. It's not just acknowledging the issue, it's providing them good suggestions and comprehensive answers to them so that that they feel heard and actually taken care of. But in terms of building processes, is that you want to be you want to be proactive to issues rather than being reactive. So I think a big part of our role in the business and being Airbnb managers is dealing with problems, really. So like just there's so many things that happen with an Airbnb, with properties in general, right? Things are caused by the guest or not caused by the guest. So being proactive in it is really important. So I'd say a cornerstone of it really comes down to your cleaners, because they are really your boots on the ground people, the people that are going to the property the most and know the property really, really well. So you really need to make sure you're working with cleaners that are working with you. So, you know, they're not just cleaning, is that they know how to look out for things. You know, hey, they're like, hey, the shower drain's not running smoothly. I've used the drain stick as well, nothing's coming out, you need to get it fixed, right? It's these things that even though it's small in the whole grand scheme of an experience, it really taints guests a lot, from even though everything else is perfect, if their shower drain is just clogged and it's not draining, shampoo's clogged all over the place, they will give you 2 stars. So it's really important that you communicate with your cleaners, and that your cleaners aren't just giving you reports at the end of the day or after they're done. It's that they're providing you live updates for urgent matters. So in our team, for example, we have a virtual assistant that's dedicated every day from 8 a.m. local time to 5 p.m. local time, because that's when the cleaning shifts happen. And his sole job is to support the cleaners, because the cleaners also need support, right? Like they're not part of our business, that they know exactly what we're communicating with guests, what the next guest is expecting, what the guest told them. So we're there to fully support them.
I guess your question about where we usually fall short, it's usually value, because we're using all these dynamic pricing software. So our prices are usually higher than competitors, especially in peak season. And slow season will bring them down. But yeah, people would ding a star here or there on value, just because they're paying a pretty penny, because our listings do look nicer than our competition, which is why we're able to charge them. But some people can't please everyone, right?
Yeah. Ultimately, at the end of the day, your client is going to be the landlord that you represent, which, for me, I'd take higher revenue all day long. It's capitalist society. Okay, awesome. And I guess, do you guys, I've heard these things where sometimes people would create like a package, like what to do in the city, like restaurants to check out. I've sometimes seen it in Airbnb. Honestly, like it's there and I pick it up, I look at it and I throw it away. But for some people, they may get a lot of value from it. Or, I've had Airbnbs where I've been a guest, and sometimes people will follow up at the beginning, make sure I check in safe. And then when I leave, like, all of those other sort of small, which may seem insignificant things, do they make a big difference? And do you have systems around that as well?
Yeah, we definitely do. I think one of the things that have really helped guests and they consistently comment on is, so all hosts obviously provide check-in instructions and everything, but it's usually written in words. So what we do is we actually just have a 1-page PDF. We create it on Canva, and it's literally simple things, but it's things that we've just encountered. You have to account for that. Just assume that you're dealing with a guest that knows nothing, even though you've written everything very straightforward. Like as in, you just have a single family home and they should check in at the front door. You will find guests that are not even checking in at the right home. Just really silly things. So what we've done is we literally just have a picture of the home from the exterior, like this is your home, check in through the front door. We literally circled the front door for them. And then for us, we have smart locks at all of our homes. So we literally have another picture of the smart lock and we tell them exactly how to operate it. So because so for example, our lock specifically is that you have to press a wake up button on it, because otherwise if you touch any other digit, it's going to register that as your code. And then guests are like, hey, your code's not working, when really it is. It's just they've entered the wrong code. So our instructions are press this, and then we highlight that again, and then we tell them. But for more complicated units where, let's say it's actually not the front door, is that again, we have those instructions on, hey, I actually cross off the front door, tell them don't use this, and then go to the back door instead. And then they actually always say, thank you so much for the clear instructions. It was really easy to find.
Yeah, in terms of systems, we have a channel manager that would automatically, it's a rules-based system.
Yeah.
It knows when to send out these check-in instructions. So, 1 to 1.5 days before check-in, we'll send these so people can take a look. A day after their check-in, we'll send them the follow-up, right? Make sure they're okay. Then the checkout instructions go out, and then we send them the rating guide where we tell them, hey, please leave us 5 stars, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
So it's all systemized. We do have someone that looks through that system. So our VA, for example, the rating guide is the one that's a bit more subjective, because in some cases we may choose not to send it. Everything else, like, yes, it goes out based on a rules-based system, but wherever there's some subjectivity involved, like someone would actually look it over, make sure, if someone had any issues during their stay, they would amend like the rating guide, apologize for the problems, tell them, hey, listen, we hear you, we're gonna make sure we fix this for the future guests. In some cases, we may give them like a small refund too, right, depending on what the issue is, right? So someone will actually amend these, and it goes out just to make sure that we're making so we don't sound like a robot, right? It's just trying to achieve the right balance between automating everything and then adding that personal touch where it's needed.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good little tidbit, right? Like if you give even a small rebate, $25, that's a big difference between a 3-star and a 5-star review. And I would rather lose 25 to ensure that I keep a high rating. Look, we have a few more questions coming. Let's try to bang them out as quickly as possible. I'm not sure if we'll get through all of them. So someone asked this, this is in regard, this came in when you guys were speaking about the insurance of Airbnb. Does this also apply to long-term, like 1-month tenant in Airbnbs? I guess if you book through the platform, it would.
The homeowner's insurance policy or the Airbnb insurance?
I think it's probably the Air. Well,
so
both.
Let's talk about both. Yeah, Airbnb would apply to both, right? Your homeowner's insurance policy, you'll have to read the terms to see what kind of stays it covers. But usually, like, of course, make sure that all lengths of stays are covered under your homeowners as well.
Are you guys only operating in Canada?
Yes, at the moment.
Have you considered the States?
We definitely have, but I think right now we have a full plate with Canada. But I think it definitely not for the next year, I'd say, for the States.
Our first LinkedIn question, so we have to get to it. How do you figure out building a maintenance crew for a property?
Tap into your entire network. Definitely get referrals if you know anyone in the area. That's always the first and best way. And if not, there's a lot of different marketplaces and apps for it.
In the bigger cities, like use TaskRabbit. But if you're in a smaller city, use Kijiji, Facebook Marketplace. If you don't already know people, and then
if you have a cleaner, ask your cleaner. She'll do it because oftentimes they will, or she has a husband that will take care of stuff, or a son of some sort.
But it is trial and error, right? Or find like companies with Google reviews. So appliance repair is very easy. HVAC is very easy because usually there's like reliable companies for this kind of stuff. Plumbing and electrical as well, right? There's companies with Google reviews. So, there's some credibility. You're not sending someone like you know nothing about into your house. It's handyman usually where we run into issues. But use TaskRabbit. In bigger cities, use Facebook Marketplace, Kijiji, and your own network in the smaller cities. And it's trial and error, right? You send someone, if they don't do a good job, they don't send you pictures, like you don't work with them again, right? Like you're free to choose who you work with.
I think I've also used the Nextdoor app a lot as well. That's really helpful in terms of finding referrals.
Yeah, I guess it's like similar to someone's like, how do you find a contractor in this city? And you are definitely right. Some of it is trial and error, referral based. And even, if you're trying someone new, and this is like not from an Airbnb perspective, but just like a rental property perspective, if there's someone that I'm giving a shot to new, usually I have someone boots on the ground. Like an Airbnb, it's a cleaning lady, right? It's like, hey, here's an extra $30. Could you just go and check and make sure like things are okay? Like in Windsor, when I was investing there, still I'm investing there. Sometimes I'll send my property manager there. It's like, here's $100. I hired my own handyman, right? Like, can you just go see if everything's right, And then once we notice the pattern of that handyman's being good, I can start putting a bit more trust in them as well. This is a follow-up. What if you buy a property and the municipality disallows Airbnb?
Yeah, you petition them to grandfather you in. That's not going to be successful.
We've never seen that happen, to be honest, in our experience.
Yeah, it's just that you just got to bite the bullet, which is why we keep on saying, like, don't buy a property just to Airbnb. Make sure you have multiple, exit plans. If it's not going to work out for Airbnb, can you easily find a long-term tenant?
Do you want to put a long-term tenant?
Can you convert it to a midterm rental, right? Like,
okay, stop there. Midterm rental. What the heck is that? 30 seconds. What is it?
So any stays longer than 30 nights, it depends. Every municipality is different. You got to read like how they define short-term rental. But let's say if someone says anything less than 28 nights as short term. So anything 29 and over will be midterm rental. So it's in that gray area. It's neither short term rentals nor it's long term rentals. So that's the area where we're playing in. We want to make sure that the LTV does not apply to them because they're not signing a year-long lease. But at the same time, it's not short term. So stuff like they don't pay any HST on the nightly rate, stuff like that.
How are you guys on time? You have time for two quick questions, just so we can get down.
For sure.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. I don't want to hold you guys up as well. Okay. So someone asked, for the 60+ units you have, what is the approximate single family homes, condos? Is there any other types that you help manage?
I'd say like condos is about a third of our portfolio. It's the easiest to manage because the condos take care of a lot of maintenance, right? There's no garbage, no lawn, no snow, none of that to take care of. The condo like has people come in on a schedule, change the fire alarm batteries, change the furnace filters. So those are the easiest. I'd say a third is condos. A third would be single family homes, which are the most difficult to manage. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you got to deal with garbage, lawn, snow, shit breaks down in the house all the time. Gotta get someone to call it, blah 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 blah. And then the remaining third will be like smaller basement units, some private bedrooms that we manage. And then what else? Some special properties as well. We have some themed properties.
Single family.
Yeah, I guess those are single family homes too. Yeah.
Going back to this really quick, do you guys offer medium-term rental services or not yet? Is that something you're looking at eventually breaking into?
We do it through Airbnb. So we help our clients, like price a property to midterm clients, make sure we have all the amenities in the unit that appeal to midterm clients, advertise and market the property on Airbnb to midterm clients, because we're kind of forced to in some markets anyway, because the winter's dead, right? Short-term rentals don't work. But yeah, we don't really have a website because to do that is like a whole licensing process anyway. You gotta get registered through TICO if you're doing it properly. A lot of people do it, but they're not registered. But yeah, to do it properly, you need to be registered and licensed.
Yeah, that's the final question here. This came in, by the way, it's a financing question, so you guys can just like DM me directly. I'm happy to talk about this a bit offline. But really appreciate you guys joining us here today. A lot of great engagement. I got a lot of value from it. I'm sure the audience did as well. If people want to either explore how they could potentially work with you on the management side, or if they want to book a one-on-one call with you, how could they best do so?
Definitely reach out to us on Instagram at Airbnb Simplified, or you can also email us at admin@donglecapital.com, and we'll both, between the two of us, someone will get back to you guys really quickly.
And it's been floating down there the entire time. If you guys have not noticed, it's there. Tracey Aahil, really appreciate your time. Honestly, again, book of knowledge when it comes to short-term rentals. Guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. And look, if there's a question that we didn't get answered, feel free to reach out to me. Maybe we can run this again in the future, because it seems like a lot of people are enjoying it. Anyways, I hope you guys all have a great night. And again, appreciate your time, Tracey and Aahil. Take care all.
Thank you for having us.
So thank you for hosting, and